Now we have time to move on to our next guest, who is hopefully patiently waiting on the line. Mr. Yorck Niclas Prehm, Head of Research from Topford Transport. Hello, Yorck, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me this time here. I'm a bit unhappy that I could join you in Rotterdam this time, but yeah.
At least we have the technology to bring you into the studio, even though it's from your office. Now, you have listened to the presentation carefully, I assume. So what do you think? Is the fleet that we have available mature enough to cover the demands of these changes that we are seeing coming up?
There's a certain risk that the fleet will not be able to cover the demand. There are certain issues with the fleet after some period of poor markets and poor earnings. The order book shrinked a lot, and the fleet is getting older and older, and the amount of fleet available to the market will get lower over the next 5 to 10 years.
So you are saying basically that the tonnage available right now is not really fit for the job. So what is the next step then?
The next step would be ordering new buildings, and there we see some difficulties with pricing, with rate stability, and also with the availability of new building slots. When you look at the numbers, the multi-purpose fleet, as we defined it, it's vessels with 5,000 deadweight and above, and a combined lifting capacity of 100 metric tons and above. The order book represents only 2.3% of the sailing fleet. And that means with an average, with 27% of the fleet being 20 years or older, or 15 years older, I'm sorry, we're gonna see up to 20% of the fleet leaving the market within the next 5 to 10 years, and only 3 to 5% of new vessels coming to the market.
And looking at the prices of these new incoming vessels, what would be the average price of, let's say, a mid-range MPP vessel?
So the standard type, which is 12,500 deadweight, 2 times 250 metric tons gear, the typical F500 type these days would cost around 32 to 33 million when built in China. And when we talk about this order book, most of the vessels have been ordered in China, and then we come back to the geopolitical issues we just heard about, and there are certain uncertainties when the full order book shall come from China, and if there are changes, we won't see these vessels coming to the market.
Yeah, I read that in one of your studies, you said we recently identified that for one size segment of the MPP market, 50% of the fleet is controlled from one single large nation, which also controls a huge portion of the new building yards for the MPP sector. Would that be China?
It's China. It's the segment between 25,000 and 40,000 deadweight, the large vessels, which will be the backbone for the upcoming demand from the renewables. You need a lot of deck space and high capacity vessels to carry all the towers for offshore and onshore wind. And it's in a way that all new buildings come from China, that in this segment, you see that 50% of the fleet is controlled by Chinese entities. The very few remaining vessels which are available on the charter market, because most of the ships are directly controlled by operators, are controlled in China, and there's a high dependence on this 50% of the fleet. And if there are changes in the geopolitical landscape, this might cause difficulties.
And in terms of new yards and new yard capacity, is it possible that we see some yards in Europe or elsewhere trying to grab a larger market share in the new buildings?
It's a lot depending on the pricing of the European shipyards. So the European shipyards, or most of them, are not able to build series. They all more or less concentrated on building Navy ships, building cruise ships, especially the German shipyard landscape is like that. So when we look at alternative places for ship building and MPP, we look at Indonesia, India, Vietnam, Southeast Asia. The Europeans, except for some of the Dutch yards, will have difficulties to be competitive with building MPP vessels.
And the second-hand market is quite tight, I assume.
It is. It changes a little bit. There is a low availability of ships in the second-hand market, and these are not the top-notch vessels which are wanted by everyone. But what we now see is that the container lines which try to purchase many MPP vessels with a good TU capacity now refrains from doing that, and the prices are going down a little bit. And also one big group of buyers, of course, the Russians are more or less gone from the market.
You mentioned the container carriers. How much effect are they still having on the MPP fleet?
The effect is getting lower. And you can follow up the rates in the container markets, which are going down. And there's not that high demand anymore that they switch to the more complicated MPP vessels. From the operational side, an MPP vessel is more or less a hassle to a container operator. They wouldn't take these ships if there wasn't a high pressure to perform on the cargo side.
And we also have been able to follow the charter rates for the MPP vessel. They've been going up for a couple of years. Now the prices are starting to come down a bit, charter rates. So how do you expect this trend to develop further?
The trend, we are now talking, when we talk about rates going down, we are still at record high levels. And with the high amount of demand, which is coming up for the next years, we strongly believe that the rate levels will remain high. What we see now is some kind of market correction, the reaction on the uncertainties in the market, the stepping out of the container guys from the MPP market. But still, the rate levels will remain high. And furthermore, they have to remain high. Because when it comes to the urgent need of fleet renewal in the market, so there's a lot of replacement required. The fleet has to become greener. The environmental footprint becomes more and more important on the shipper side and also on the carrier side. In order to start and develop new building projects, the rates have to be sustainable enough to support the current new building prices.
And with the rates being as high, the operators have been able and the owners have been able to rake in some profits. Would you see that some of these profits are directed into new buildings?
Some of the owners and also some of the operators try to invest, but it's not that easy as it sounds like. There is yard capacity. There's yard capacity in China, but many shipyards don't like to build MPP vessels.
Why
it's
is it
much easier and technically easier to build container ships and a large series of 20 container ships. So when a European operator or owner comes up and say, I want to build 4 MPPs, it's not that interesting. Building an MPP is technically more complicated. You need very skilled workers to do this. And also the landscape of the MPP owners is different because they send strong new building supervision teams and they really look at what the yards are doing. And it's far more complicated to have these strict and owners and if you build chips for them, you might have more difficulties than a stock market company ordering 20 container chips of the same design.
And in terms of design, as you said, that mostly then comes from the owners and the companies placing orders at the shipyards, doesn't it?
For the high heavy lift market, yes. Mostly it's a cooperation. Either there are European designers which have a suitable design and the buyers bring it with them, but there are also some decent and very well done Chinese designs from the shipyards and the Chinese design houses.
Yeah, this is why I'm going back to the question of any emerging shipyards. Is there a possibility for new shipyards to partner with owners and designers to develop the vessel from scratch and start building it? Or is it then again a question of pricing?
First of all, new shipyards coming up is difficult because you need the skilled workforce. And even in China, it's difficult to get the skilled workforce. Then you have to have a lot of experience in shipbuilding because installing heavy lift cranes with all the forces being there, it's difficult. So you need an experienced shipyard, you need a skilled shipyard, and it's not like someone that saying, okay, I now start building MPP ships.
Now, with all this in mind, what do you think? What do you see is currently being done to alleviate, let's say, the pressure on the MPP segment?
Not much. That's the way it is. You see,
Could you elaborate a bit,
some
please?
of the wind brigade guys now going for deck carriers and other tonnage. Everyone is looking for alternatives, but the key solution for all the problems and for the supply chain is we need vessel space, and we need modern and economic vessel space.
So is that something you see developing in the future?
Yeah. It's difficult. Again, we don't see the orders at the moment. We see many companies being active, but the landscape is changing. The interest rates go up, and so the prices for ships go up. Even if the yards have only very low profit margins, because the equipment prices go up, the steel price is going up, costs for workforce are going up. So the rates are going down a bit. This causes further uncertainty, and we are in a very difficult environment.
And how long do you expect this difficult environment to last? What are the current predictions?
It's in the same way difficult to forecast it. There is enough money in the market. You have to find the right shipyard. The calculation has to look well. The demand is high, and it's like when is the right timing for making the commercial decision? And now with new building prices going up, it's maybe already too late. What the key issue is in all these topics, we see the Europeans trying to get more independent from Russian oil and gas and from fossil fuels. And we see all the wind power, political targets for wind power installations going up and up and up. And there's not enough capacity to carry all this wind power equipment, which is set to be installed in the next years.
So basically the goal or the aim is to build Is it larger vessels?
It is larger vessels, and this is what the wind manufacturers would like to have. But I believe since these targets are almost political targets, there have to be an environment and also a political framework to assist creating the right tools for the supply chain. And then we might look into building ships in Europe again. But there has to be a political will to do this in order to achieve the renewables targets.
And
which
you
are
are
increased every
working
day.
with a number of shipping companies, and especially in the MPP sector. Is there, let's say, a push from that side to expedite these political decisions?
Forcing or implementing political solutions or just takes a lot of time. And I think we don't have the time anymore.
Is there any framework in place?
There are many initiatives, but not for the moment. There are many talks. There are many lobbyists running around doing this, but it's difficult.
Yeah, so to conclude, the fleet that we have right now in terms of, let's say, the MPP sector is getting older, is lacking in capacity, and we don't see that many new buildings coming in the market fast enough. Would you agree?
Yes.
Perfect.
And of course, this will keep the rate levels at the high levels.
Thank you, Yorck. Thank you, Yorck, for your insights. We will also hear from you in the future, definitely on Project Cargo Journal. We'll stay in touch. But now it's time to move on to our next topic.